Hey everyone, it's Kai from Cool Collectibles. I posted my MP-45 Bumblebee review the other day, and it's been doing the rounds on the Transformers forums and groups and so on. And the Facebook groups are, I don't know, depending on how you view it, they're the best and worst of the Transformers collecting community. I've been getting a bit of flack because apparently I'm a Takara fanboy, and MP-45 here is absolute trash, and I didn't point out any of those negative points at all, which actually, I don't know if those people actually watched the review or not, because I thought it was a pretty objective review, and I did point out things like the price point being an issue, of course, and the feet themselves. But I'll go through some of the things that the haters on those particular groups have said, which I think are absolutely ridiculous. Comparing this old mold to the new, and not just that, but comparing it to previous MP figures and what we've got before. I mean, when I compare a new figure and give my thoughts on what I like about it, it's not just on that particular figure, but what I feel the line has progressed through the years, what we've got beforehand, and all the issues that they're complaining about. I don't see how they can complain just about this figure being shit, whereas all the other figures don't have those same particular issues. And we'll do the comparison on this. I mean, one of the common posts that I've had was, I'm not doing a fair side-by-side comparison. And one ridiculous point was, why aren't I lifting the arms? Why aren't I lifting the arms on these figures? So if I just lift this, and you see all of the panel lining there on this. Now apparently this is trash. Now I don't quite see it that way at all. I mean, the car mode of this is so small and perfectly cartoon accurate. The way that they were able to engineer it, getting into a bot mode that is actually taller and slimmer than this original, with only a few minor negatives about it, is engineering genius to me. That takes skill to design something like that. But they're saying, look at all of these gaps, look at all of this paneling. I mean, I don't know who sort of poses their figures with their arms up like that, but they're saying if I compare this guy and I lift his arm up, it's 100 times better. Now, come on. They were saying that I posted another photo of someone who did a side-by-side comparison on the TFW group, and I think they had the backpack like this, and they were saying, come on, that is just a fake post and a Takara fanboy not giving this justice, because doing this makes a shitload of difference. I have no idea what they're on about. I mean, this whole backpack piece here is huge in comparison. It's one massive piece, but apparently, according to them, that's okay. But this is not okay. All of this sort of detailing here, it's all one piece again. I think there's like a panel that must flip out somewhere, and then there's this massive part of the chest, which is just the top of the car. And I guess if you're a G1 toy fan, this might be right up your alley, because this is very much more akin to the toy. But this, if you're a G1 cartoon fan, I don't know how you can say that this is better than this. I mean, look at that chest. Looks like he's had a few buffet meals, that's for sure. So you can take that massive backpack and the massive chest and the head sculpt that doesn't look anything like the cartoon. I don't know how you can say this is trash compared to this. I mean, this was perfect. This was beautiful and perfect for its day. But, you know, it's been, what, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years maybe. And this is representative of the toy technology and the engineering that has come in that time. And people were complaining about his feet. Okay, even in my review, I said that the feet are pretty bloody ugly with this panel at the back. If only they had figured out a way to hide that, it would look so much better. But people are saying that he has got snow boots on. And you look at that, and I'll compare the size of the feet again, and they're just about the same size. Maybe a couple of mil, 2 or 3 mil bigger. And so if you're going to complain that this guy has got snow feet, what are you going to do about this guy? This guy must have something like clown feet, right? I mean, it bulges out so much further at the front, that it doesn't look anything like the cartoon. It looks very much like the G1 toy. And the waist, it's got those visible ball joints there. And this one's got the really nice crotch piece with the new mechanism with MP-44. So I think that's a massive improvement. People were saying I didn't complain about the loose joints. Well, I don't know what other people are getting, but I don't have any loose joints. The arms on mine are super tight. I mentioned that in the review, where this top joint in particular is very tight. The arms rotate freely. It's not like they're super loose that it just goes all over the place, but everything seems fine. The legs here, people were saying I didn't mention the loose legs. Well, mine don't seem loose at all. I mentioned that if you move it and it flops back like that, all you need to do is manually rotate that and it locks in place. So that's there's nothing wrong with that design at all. I mean, if you look at this particular figure, I mean, can you all remember the hoo-ha about the gap here? If we're talking about gappage in the rear, I mean, people were complaining about this non-stop at the time. It didn't really bother me back then, and it still doesn't bother me. But you compare it against this guy, and his arms and his upper body, I think is next to as perfect as you can get for a cartoon representation. I mean, for me, that chest and that head sculpt won me over this figure already, putting aside all the other engineering aspects of it. So that's in comparison to this figure. So I don't know why people are so suddenly enamored by this particular figure. Sure, there's a massive price point difference. This is probably twice as expensive as this now. But for those that are into G1 cartoon accuracy, I don't know how you can pass this up. This looks so much better on display compared to the others, along with the others. But people are also complaining about how this figure is no longer MP-esque. It doesn't suit the line anymore. Now, I have no idea what they're talking about. How this can be more in tune with the MP line in its aesthetics than this. Because I think that itself is just rubbish. So what I'll do is I'll grab every other sort of unique mold that I can find in my collection, and let's do a bit of a comparison. Alright, we got MP17 Plus Prowl here, and he certainly does look pretty fantastic, again, from the front. Now, you turn him to the side, I mean, look at that, holy shit, can you see the gaps in there? I'm not sure why suddenly there's no issue with the gaps here, and you turn him around and oh my god, look at the back of him. That there's no issue, no complaints, that this somehow is not MPS, but somehow this is. Come on, that's just stupid. I think the way they designed this particular figure was the best compromise in form and function, right? It looks beautiful like that, but there's no other way that they could cover this. There's no other way that they could cover that, right? So there's no issue for this one, and that comparison about gaps and so on, I don't think really makes much sense. Whilst we're talking about gaps, I think there's still so much hate for this MP-45 tracks and the gaps that you see there. And again, that never bothered me either, because I display it from this angle, from this angle, from that angle. I think from pretty much every angle, except maybe straight on the side or from the rear, there's no issue. And the articulation more than makes up for that in my book. So again, if you're comparing this against old MPs, I mean, come on, they just look fantastic next to each other with that posability, that sort of G1 style. I'm assuming they're going to come out with a plus version of this with probably a bit more of a matte finish and so on, but once they do, I'll be gladly displaying this in its classic realistic Corvette mode. Now, what about Inferno? At the time, I said that Inferno was probably the best that Takara had ever made. And I actually saw some posts today where people were saying they think Inferno and Grapple are the pinnacle of the MP series. Now, I would totally agree with that. The design, the way they've designed the back that is so clean, and they were able to hide the ladder in the chest cavity. But even then, people must have short memories. There were so many complaints about this figure, saying, oh, you compare this figure against the third-party figures and it just looks plain. I mean, if you're a G1 cartoon fan, I don't know how you can complain about that. If you're a G1 toy fan and you want all the decals and the stickers and everything else that made the toys what they were, then by all means, you get all the Toy Hack stickers and everything else and you can put them on there. But for this particular MP series and where they're taking it, I think Takara made the right choice in making it as plain as they did, because it's perfectly cartoon accurate. And you compare the new Bumblebee with all of its sort of flat and straight lines, and you know, there's no sort of major panel lining or details or anything like that. It's all straight for the engineering is where you get all of those lines. And here, I guess they were lucky enough to hide everything away. But even then, there were complaints about this in its alt mode, where the arms were more visible in the alt mode. But that's the compromise that Takara makes when it's designing these figures. I think for the most part they're made for a realistic car mode or a truck mode, and as much articulation and G1 cartoon aesthetics as they can possibly fit into the mold. So I think again, this new Bumblebee fits in perfectly with the previous MPs. Alright, what about MP-20 plus Wheeljack? This is probably one figure, one mold that I don't remember too many complaints about. The back is pretty damn clean. There is probably a bit of gappage at the legs, at the feet here. I do like how the plus version was able to paint the insides of the feet to make it sort of blend in with the white around it. I think the original had black, which sort of broke up that nice evenness. So again, this is probably one of the least complained about molds, and I think it still stands up to the figures today. And you compare it against this, I don't see how this doesn't match that G1 toy, G1 cartoon aesthetic. It's with this particular paint app and that design, I think they fit perfectly in the collection together. And now we have Sunstreaker. I'm not even going to bother getting out the Lambor mold. I mean, it's very similar to Prowl and so on. You look at the back and it's got gaps all over the place. Now, this one here, people are still complaining about how big the backpack is, how it's got the butt flap at the back there. But again, you look at it from most angles, compare it to the cartoon, take into account all of the articulation that it can have. It is, without a doubt in my book, the best looking Sunstreaker figure on the market. You compare it against, I think there were 3 or 4 other companies that had made Sunstreaker figures, and the legs, the waist, everything, because it didn't have the engineering to do the cheat from the cartoon, it just looks odd from the body proportions. And this new Bumblebee has that same design philosophy. So, you know, they've done it with Sunstreaker, they've done it with MP-44, they've done it with MP-45 Bumblebee, and I think that is where Takara excels, in making real-world engineering choices to represent that cheat and those cheats in the cartoon. There's nothing that this sort of does. It's pretty much just, okay, that's how big it is in car mode to have a realistic car mode. There's nothing we can do about it, so it's just going to be that fat, and it's going to have this massive backpack, where that's not how they think anymore. They've actually innovated to say, okay, we're going to have that car mode. It's going to look semi-deformed and smaller than the realistic one, but how can we change it so that it looks like this, like it just jumped straight out of the cartoon? And people are complaining about that. It's just bizarre. I don't understand it. And people are saying it's being a Takara fanboy. Well, I mean, all of these figures that I've just compared against are all Takara figures. They all come with those same gappage issues, those same articulation issues, and yet people are only starting to complain about MP-44 and MP-45. I mean, I don't know what other complaints they're going to have with MP, I can't remember what number it is now, MP Hound and so on, but I think once you get Hound and you put him together with the collection with the rest of these guys, and it's going to be one awesome looking G1 Transformers collection. And it's going to look like it just came straight out of the cartoon, and that's exactly, for me, that's exactly what I want in my collection. So hopefully that gives you my thoughts on comparing this figure, this new figure, with all the figures that came before it, all the design philosophies that came before it, and just shown that I think Takara have just continued that philosophy all the way through. They haven't diverged from what they intended to do. At all times they were saying that they wanted to make toys as accurate to the cartoon as possible, and the engineering skill and design skill that they've got in their team now, I think is just only getting to the start of making that really happen. So those are my thoughts. The haters can hate as much as they want. I think all their comparisons against this older figure, as great as it was back in the day, this is definitely a dated looking figure now compared to the rest of them. So hopefully you like that, my thoughts on it, and can stay tuned for my upcoming reviews over the next week or so. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.